Jeremy Bradley back talking with Dan Gheesling, Big Brother veteran, sizing up all of the housemates this season. Let's talk about Alyssa. Everybody was gunning for her at the beginning, being Rachel's sister. I should point out Rachel joining us on the next hour of the show. But she was a target, and then viewers were making her the MVP. I'm assuming that viewers were doing that just because the house was after her, and they wanted to shake things up. Did Alyssa play a smart game? I mean, she sort of flew under the radar, I guess, kind of at the beginning. What are your thoughts on her gameplay?
Well, I would battle against your assumption that you think she got MVP because she was a target. I think she got MVP because, she's related to Rachel, and I'm a huge fan of Rachel, and I was, same thing for Alyssa. I'm like, okay, she comes from these Big Brother genetics, it's going to be fun to watch. And so I think that's why she got the MVP, and in terms of Alyssa, she was a lot of fun to root for, and you start to see a competitive side come out in her later in the game, in terms of focus during competitions and winning when she needed to. Unfortunately, the ability to kind of convince and influence is something that, she struggled with, but she was still fun to watch.
We've had a lot of questions sent in. We're going to try to motor through as many as possible. Greg writes, bringing back a house guest might not seem fair. They think they are done in the game and might get information in the jury house, then all of a sudden they are back and have all this new knowledge. What do you think of it? And I should point out, Greg is, I guess, referring to Judd, who he's gone again anyway, so...
Yeah, I think anyone that has that opportunity to get back in the game, in Judd's case, he had to fight to get back in. He wasn't voted back in. It's up to him if he gets to the end. Just because he gets voted back in isn't a golden ticket for him to get to the final two. As we've seen, he's been evicted. So I think it also puts a burden on the returning house guest that it's going to be that much more difficult for that person to convince a jury of people to win, the $500,000. So in terms of fairness or not, I think it's all the fairness is skewed where that person, yes, they get the chance to go in, but there's also the extra burden of there's always a reason to vote that person out, and that person is always going to lose a few votes in the jury because they had two chances to play the game. So I think everything equals out with that second ability or second chance to play the game.
Lisa writes, what's one misperception people have about being in the house, and what is the reality?
One misperception, I don't know if it's a misperception, but one of the cool things that I kind of like to tell people is if you watch the competitions very closely and how they're edited down, once in a while you can catch some post-audio work. So, for example, if it's a really messy competition and there's rain, you can see someone's microphone get obstructed. And if you listen very carefully, once in a while you'll hear the house guest's voice change, and that's because you have to record, exactly what you said word for word after the fact because the microphone got messed up. So it's not really a misconception, but maybe something that, people don't know about.
Right. See, us in radio do pick that up because also too when they're hosting the competitions, right, and they're not narrating as the events are unfolding, right, the host will then revoice that.
Exactly. And you probably with your
yeah,
acute ear, you can probably hear the difference in levels because it's never going to be exactly the same. But if you listen very carefully, you can tell exactly when things have been pushed in post-production.
Right. Nancy writes, if you could pick the have-not foods for the week, what would they be?
Have-not foods for the week? I would make it as fun as possible. I'm a huge fan of when they put in, oversized candy or gummy bears, and then, of course, some staple, some sort of a crazy meat or salmon or something like that. So it'd be a combination of candy and something that actually can sustain you, like salmon or tuna.
Big Brother All-Star Dan Gheesling, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Today's best music with Jeremy Bradley.